Hello, dear folks. Welcome to the show. Jack Shaw once again on East West with GNE TV. There's a big news coming. Our President Barack Obama is going to meet with the Chinese president all the way from Beijing for his first official visit as the president of China to the United States. Right? It's a big thing. It's a big event. I said to my friends the following. I said, as a Chinese American, I would hate nothing worse than if there's anything going wrong with the U.S.-China relationship. Not only do I mean it by my personal perspective, it is also to the benefit of both countries, right? So today, joining me in the first segment of our regular show, talking about energy, we want to just discuss a little bit about the China and the U.S. and China relationship, right? So with me today is my good friend and the icon kind of person in my eye. He is a energy specialist, right? He's an international affairs specialist. All right. Oh yeah, you're a former Navy officer, right?
I was in the U.S. Navy, yes.
Yeah, former U.S. Navy officer,
yeah.
And he is also the senior consultant for many international programs, including a U.S.-China nuclear energy program. So, Mr. Drexel Smith, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you.
Drexel Smith is a big name, isn't it? All right, very good. So, I remember last time was about the celebration of the 70th anniversary of winning World War II. We mentioned about the U.S.-China relationship, right? So once again, would like to make it clear to our audiences that exactly how you take on this subject, please.
Well, Jack, in many of your shows that you've invited me to be a participant at, I've been very clear that I think having a very strong, good, productive relationship between China and the U.S. is very important. And I think we see examples continuously of how important that relationship is. We talked on your last show just recently about how the economies of the two countries tie. If someone has a cough, the other one gets a cold. It's important that we stay together, but more importantly than that,
you go see a doctor. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a vivid
you call me an expert on many things, but a doctor I'm not. But I do believe strongly that the world is so interconnected.
All right.
That it's important that friends be friends. And I think it's equally important to recognize that there are some areas of the world that are very unstable. It's more important than less that China and the U.S. be friendly to each other.
Yeah, join hands.
And be partners.
Yeah, be partners.
My influence in Washington today is not big, but if I could make a recommendation, I would feel very strongly that working toward the best relationship possible is to the long-term benefit of both countries.
All right, okay. That's a very strong and a very healthy statement. Just how strong do you see of the U.S.-China relationship that can function in taking care of worldwide problems, such as the Korean nuclear problem, such as the Middle East problems, and such as, of course, and later we will move that to the economical side, right? So, with the major problem, you heard about the last night about what happens in Korea.
Well, the North Korean government apparently, according to the news this morning, made an announcement that they're going to reactivate their nuclear development facilities, and it's their intention to put a nuclear weapon in the United States. This is very disconcerting. Whether there's substance to the matter or not, this type of statement is very unnerving. And I would think that this could be an area where the U.S. and China could be better partners and ask China to provide their influence on this regime to behave a little more
to intervene
toward the betterment of the
Yes,
world, as opposed to continuing to make these kinds of very provocative statements. North Korea is claiming that they now have ballistic missile capability, that should they have a weapon, they can deliver the weapon, which makes all of Asia and the west coast of the United States very disconcerting and vulnerable. So I would think that this could be an easy, obvious, let's get together and work together toward mitigating that problem.
Exactly. The funny part is that exactly that happens at the in the eve when these two big heads meet with each other, right? Do you think that should be one of the major subjects that when they meet, they will exchange their ideas?
Well, there again, I'm not in. They haven't asked my opinion.
Okay, and they didn't ask me either.
But if I could be a bird on the shoulder, I would whisper, developing a good relationship, developing one of trust, one of honest, open communications. Do we have differences of opinion on topics? Yes, we do. But I think we have more that we see together than apart. And we should focus on those things that we can do well together, and not only focus on pieces that we have disagreements on. That's the building of a good relationship, regardless.
You're right. And in my philosophy, I believe that the reason or fact you call them two countries because there are differences. Otherwise, they will be one country, right? So it is always a major concern or a common concern to let difference remain the way it is, right? Until later, there could be some force to overcome it. And now, what you want to do is to focus on the major issues. There is so much at stake that both countries feels the danger, the necessity, to move forward. Am I right?
Yes, fundamentally, I think you and I agree on that matter. And as China has emerged in the last 100 years from being a relatively closed society to a player on the world stage, they're a major economy, they're 1.5 billion people. It's irresponsible not to recognize China as just simply a major world power. And I think there are areas of our planet to where the fires are burning hot. My goodness, look at what's happening in Syria. We have a group of people that very barbarically, in my opinion, are destroying cultural items that are thousands of years old.
Destroy civilization, in other words.
And you know, in many respects, the historical religious landmarks that are thousands of years old deserve some world recognition and protection.
You're right.
Look at what's happening in many areas of Africa in their instabilities. So I argue that there is enough problems in the world where we could look together for solutions and not continue to focus on those matters where we have a difference of opinion.
Right. In other words, there is a more problem that these two countries, being the two major powers, can join their hands together in finding a solution rather than trying to dig into who's number one, who's number two. Let's do a competition. Let's do this. Let's do that. Rather than
Exactly.
that could be.
Yeah, I think we need to leave the competition to the Olympic sports.
Yeah, right. Sure.
You know.
Sure. And even the Olympic Games, you're talking about friendship first, right?
Oh, I think so.
You compete for the purpose of friendship. You're not competing for the purpose of defeating.
That's right.
That's not right, right? Okay. Now, speaking of that, though, there's one saying, especially in this country, when you talk about those eagle type of politicians, they say, quote unquote, the rise of China poses kind of a danger to the United States, to the national security whatsoever. What's your take on that? Is that true or false?
It's true that many people have a very strong opinion that the rise of China, the building of their military is very concerning. Of course that's true. Anytime you see another nation with a strong military power, there's concern about will they be a friend or will they be a foe?
All right.
So I think those concerns are legitimate, but like any other relationship, you need to work on where we can be together, not apart.
In other words, by following your philosophy, the rise of China only makes its position stronger to make friends. Am I right?
Well, it's my point of view. I'm not sure it's shared by everybody. Military people are in the business to prepare for a fight and not for peace. That's not their job. Again, I'm not an expert in military-oriented issues and don't want to go down that path because I'm really not an expert. I'm just a student of the world. And
all right. That's a good term.
My view is that I think unless there's reason to believe that we can't be friends, which I would find very disturbing. I find no reason that we can't be good friends.
At all. Especially when you mentioned that one gets cold, the other coughs.
That's exactly.
One sneezes, the other sees a doctor.
Exactly. We're tied economically.
Kind of tied, though. There's no way you can conflict.
And my goodness, Jack, we were very good friends helping each other to a common adversary 70 years ago. There's no reason that we can't continue to be friends today.
Sure.
Let's get on with the post of friendship.
All right. Even
that's my view.
Even militarily, during the celebration of the 70th anniversary, there's lots of talk, huge talk about flying tigers.
Of course.
Right? So, which people remember.
So,
that's a token of friendship. All right, my dear audience, today with my good friend, Drexel Smith, a man of huge credit, and he himself was a former U.S. Navy officer, and he is now in the energy field, very active. We're using the first segment to share our views, share his views with my audience. It's about his take of U.S.-China relationship. As conclusion, he says he found no reason they do not make friends, right? Okay, now, all right. Okay, let's take a short moment now. When we come back, we'll continue to find out with our issue today of the sb350, which is a bill that confuses everybody. Stay with us, please. Hello, dear folks. Welcome to the show. Jack Chow on the East-West Show with the GNE TV. As a matter of fact, we are talking about our sb350 bill, which is a bill that bothers everybody, which is a bill that stirs up the water and that has everybody's concern, right? So with my good friend, Mr. Drexel Smith, and the energy specialist, especially in terms of fossil energy versus nuclear energy, so on and so forth. And now we're sticking to the point whether should California go down by 50% of its consumption, right? So, Drexel, please, I need your opinion by answering my question. What is Bill SB 350, please?
Well, SB 350 is a California State Senate bill that was constructed to have a number of parts to it that reduce the, quote, carbon footprint from an environmental standpoint. And its centerpiece of the bill was a demand to reduce gasoline consumption by 50% in so many years. As you know, SB 350 was approved and expected to be signed by the governor this week, but they removed that centerpiece.
The centerpiece out.
Because they couldn't get the votes. My view takes several points. My first point is California views itself as very progressive in implementing laws that favor the environmental community.
Emission control.
From emission control to lots of other factors.
Pollution reduction, yes.
And there's a part of me that says the clean air that we enjoy today is because people took a leadership role 15 years ago in demanding that we cut emissions that the automotive industry said couldn't be done. Well, but the fact of the matter is it was done, and we now have more clean air days than bad air days. So it took some courageousness on the part of government. But I say there's a limit to how much government should do. There's a direct relationship of the laws implemented over the last 10 years that have made it extremely difficult for business to exist in California.
You're right, yeah, especially you're right. Yeah.
So basically, I'm of the opinion today that California has become far too zealous, far too aggressive in pushing an environmental agenda at the detriment to industry. Now, let's talk specifically about gasoline and automobiles. I make the argument you have reduced the air emissions from the exhaust by mandating that industry make the necessary changes. I say from here, in terms of the consumption of gas, let the free market take its life. You and I have talked on a number of shows about the rise in gasoline prices and what happens. People use public transportation.
Go away.
People start driving less. People are more discriminating on their cars. People start purchasing automobiles that use less fuel. People buy alternative automobiles. My view is that the marketplace will drive that. I will be prophetic and say over the next 4 years, we will see a continued movement toward electric vehicles. We will see a continued movement towards smaller, more efficient cars simply because that's what people are demanding. We see fewer large families. So now all of a sudden large family vehicles are not as popular. For the upcoming Olympics in Japan, they are pushing heavily to a hydrogen-fueled fleet of bus vehicles. So I think between alternative fuels like hydrogen, electricity, smaller vehicles, we stand a high probability of moving toward less gasoline without the need for government involvement.
I see. I like this analysis. It looks like step by step, you're looking into it and pointing out a brighter future for what we can do and how much we can do, right? So I got a major question to ask before I can touch any other areas. You're talking about the centerpiece of the 350, the sb350 being taken out though. When that core is out, what's left
Not
in
much.
in the bill?
There's a lot of peripheral pieces that relates to transportation, issues related to motorcycles, issue related to continued vehicle smog, and other minor issues. But the centerpiece and the big argumentative piece of 350 was the 50% reduction in fuel.
In other words, if we count by the nature of the centerpiece, though, the core of the bill, though, the bill is defeated.
That's right.
The bill is defeated.
Is
right?
defeated.
Okay, very good. Well, let me express myself. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. In the very beginning, it looks more we can do. When you are done, you've done so much down to the core, almost to the bone, though. There's very little you can do. Am I right? There's
No,
limited
no,
amount of work you can do.
no. I don't agree with that. I think that federal, state, local governments can continue making a big impact by providing incentives. I like the concept of rewarding people's behavior with an incentive as opposed to the negative, you must reduce fuel
Oh, you're right.
by
you're
50%.
Right, you're right.
So let me just give you an example back to the electric vehicle comment. An incentive by the federal government, state government, to offer tax incentives to buy electric cars, I think rewards people for doing that. And I'm hopeful we'll continue those programs.
Well, you're right. You're right.
At the local level, I was just working with a local city here in the valley
I see.
on updating their general plan, and I've lobbied heavily that included within their plan, they look at the installation of electric charging stations in many of the malls, transportation areas like bus stations,
Public
and
accessible areas.
public accessible areas, okay, where the city can sponsor electric charging stations. Now, I'm not proposing they give it away. It can be for fee, but the infrastructure required to put those charging stations in is something that ought to be planned. If I, for one, may be motivated because my home and my office is not that far apart, if there was a nearby charging station that I could use, I might be very motivated to an electric vehicle.
All right, all right. In other words, rather than doing the mandate, rather doing the fines and penalties, so on and so forth, we know that the 50% plan is dead anyway.
That's
right?
dead
and by
this
that,
year.
Dead this year. And well, unless it goes a revival next year or something, well, people will still fight because they will hate to be cut off 50% when anything else, when nothing else can be replaced yet.
Well, remember, there's a great movement of environmental fever that says it requires the government involvement to put penalties in. So I suspect that that movement will be back every year promoting that type of legislation. I just am strongly opposed to it. Not that I'm opposed to the idea of lowering emissions.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah,
I'm opposed to the methodology. I'm very supportive of the idea of, like I said, cities putting in the infrastructure for electrical charging. I'm very supportive of the idea for the state, as we did under Governor Schwarzenegger, to look at hydrogen fuel stations. I'm very supportive of these alternative energy sources to lessen our dependency on gasoline.
All right, very good, very good. Thank you very much, Drexel. I like that down-to-earth statement that you're saying that you're not opposing it because that you don't like the idea, you like the practicality, the feasibility you're talking about, right? So let's take a very short moment now. When we come back, we'll keep finding. It looks to me is rather a philosophical issue than a economical issue right now at this point. So am I right or wrong? You correct me when we come back. Let's take a short moment now, please. Hello, my dear fellow Californians. Whoever, if you care about our energy, please be welcome back to the show. A big talk with my good friend Drexel Smith, energy specialist, talking about California Bill sb350, with the core of its value died already, killed already, and we're talking about it. About a fact, it is not a bill itself, it is talking about concept. As my friend Drexel Smith mentioned, that he's not going against the idea of cutting down gasoline consumption. He's talking about the methodology of it, right? So let's come back, resume that point. All I was trying to say is that, do you recall Arnold Schwarzenegger time when he called for the old truck replacement? Anything that runs about 200,000 miles or something for 20 years old got to be replaced with some incentives. You recall those?
Yeah,
things?
well, that was a federal government program.
Oh, there was a federal
Yeah,
or
yeah.
state?
No, federal.
I see,
The state implemented, but they were trying to get old, inefficient, polluting cars off the highway. So the government got involved in purchasing those vehicles
I see.
as an incentive to get people to buy newer, more efficient, more environmentally friendly vehicles. Do I like the idea of the government stepping into that level? Not necessarily, but conceptually it supports my notion of positive incentives as opposed to negative.
All right.
But I think
You're still proactive to the government involvement in giving incentives to encourage people to go forward rather than having them fine, regulated, cut, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's
Exactly.
exactly we were.
And I think, as I've said to you on your shows before, the issue of gasoline is somewhat self-regulating. Right now, the world has an abundant supply of oil.
All right.
Okay.
That's why I had 319 yesterday.
Okay.
I think.
You're talking about gasoline at the
At
pump.
the pump, yes.
And I'm on the oil.
Crude.
The oil
crude.
part.
40 something.
Okay. Yeah, we're in the $40 a barrel, and we have an excess supply. And there was a paper written last week by an analysis that said there's so much supply, and with the world economies lowering, oil could go into the $20 a barrel.
All right. That's a good thing or a bad thing to you?
I have
If it
shared
did
with
go that
you,
way.
I think that's a bad thing.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's not good because my view is oil needs to be in the $60s a barrel. Okay? It needs to be there as an incentive for the oil producing companies and countries to be incentivized to continue their work for new oil, because it's a very short-lived problem. We can consume in this world this surplus very rapidly.
I'm a little confused here. It looks to me that only tighter supplies of gasoline would force people to go otherwise, right? With the cheaper gasoline, with the sufficient supply of gasoline, there is no push for people to go anywhere else.
Well,
This is where I get confused.
yeah, I was first talking about the global picture of oil consumption and the idea of it being in the 40s, where oil producers cut back on production, oil exploration, oil technology activities begin to fall dramatically because they don't have the revenue to pursue new production, new technologies, new ventures.
When was that?
Okay? Well, as the cost of oil or the price of oil dropped from 60 to 40, we saw a number of organizations stop, slow down, end. Fracking, for example, becomes not as cost competitive.
You mentioned about the refineries in California down
So
in San Diego.
I'll
right?
come to that in a second. So to me, I would rather see oil per barrel higher. At least it's an incentive for all those activities to continue. Because it's a frightfully short period of time that we would consume in the world all of that surplus oil in the barrel. Now, let's go to the second issue. The issue is now refineries. Remember, we've talked at length about in California specifically, we have a special blend.
The special blend, the summer kind
And
of
we talked about
recipe.
the perfect storm of refinery A had a fire and refinery B had this and refinery C was going through modifications. You were very cynical, saying you thought the refineries were happily making extra money.
I thought that way, yes.
Yeah, well, many people agree with you. I don't disagree, but I also say it was the perfect storm. Well, now the refineries are catching up. Okay? So now we have a low cost of oil. We now have refineries going. Gasoline, what happens? The price at the pump has begun to drop. And I predict we're going to be closer under $3 a gallon.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, in the very near term.
All right.
Because the refineries are back online doing their thing.
I heard yesterday.
And oil is very low.
Of course, California is in particular. It is the highest of the nation, right?
Well,
I
it's
heard overall situation when they compare the cheapest price though in North Carolina, in the city of Greensboro, is $1.98. Can you believe it?
well, but the downside is you have to live in Carolina.
Oh yeah, we don't want to go there. We don't want to go there.
Yeah.
All right. So, my dear audience, we're trying to look into our energy situation. By that, we cannot avoid talking about our gasoline and the gasoline prices, right? So, with me today is my good friend, Mr. Drexel Smith. We're sharing his great thoughts about what we shall look into the rest of the summer, if we call it tail of summer or the beginning of the fall. What would our gasoline prices shall be with the death of the sb350, at least the core of which is dead. All right,
For this year.
For this year. All right. Good. All right. We'll be right back, please. Hello, dear folks, my dear fellow Californians. Those of you who do not want to end up living anywhere else but California, you have to bear with the high cost of everything. Not only our housing prices higher, not only our cost of driving is higher, even the road conditions or traffic conditions or freeway conditions, anything, even though our gasoline price is the highest. We still love California, so that's why we call ourselves proud Californians. The Californians have our embarrassment, so we're embarrassed about our gasoline price. Right now, looks a little more, to me, I enjoyed it very much. 319 is a lot better. It's quite a substantial saving to me. Well, so where did it go? You mentioned about going a trend of even lower than $3.
Well, I'm guessing, of course, like anybody, but with the current world supply of oil being so abundant, for the near term, we have a surplus of oil. The cost of the oil continues to project to go down, followed by the refineries in California coming back online.
Coming back up, yes.
Okay, should reduce that problem. And the demand for gasoline, in some respects, is going down because there's been a drive the past couple of years for people wanting and demanding smaller and more fuel-efficient vehicles.
Replacement.
Yeah. So I think when you combine all of those factors, all of a sudden the competitive price at the pump, I see in the near term will go down.
That's why in the very beginning you emphasizes on the fact that let the market take care of,
Exactly.
rather than politics.
Exactly.
Right? All right, that's a very, very, very good point of view that I would like to recommend to my audiences because it really exactly fits my shoes because I like it. But the only thing you want to do right is that to let the market take care of. With the trend of people going elsewhere, trying to get a replacement of their means of transportation or cars or cheaper cars or lower consumption cars or so on and so forth, the demand of gasoline goes down and that brings the refinery back, right? So this is a very logic. Okay, now you're talking about when you're talking about the market though, market goes two different ways. Number one way, in my eye, is about supply, demand, consumer side. And the other way is that when you talk about market, there's a trend of renovation or innovation, right? And kind of like that. You're talking about replacement energy. You're talking about all kinds of different type of automobiles that could be possible. The only two types I haven't checked with you about are left in, well, very rare. How about nuclear cars? Anybody working on nuclear cars? With a a chunk like this, you can keep driving for 50 years or something?
I'm not aware of any practical nuclear powered cars. I'm not aware of really any development that is serious in that world.
Theoretically, it can work. Am I right?
Well, remember, you take uranium and enrich it, and then you allow it to interact in a nuclear process. What you're really doing is creating heat.
Okay. You use the heat to drive.
And the heat then needs to be converted into something. So in a commercial nuclear power plant, the traditional method is to allow the nuclear reaction to heat water that makes steam that turns a turbine. So to translate that into a vehicle, I think is not as near-term accessible as other technologies.
All right.
But you bring up a great point, Jack, that in California, our legislators in the state law are so excited to push for things like electric vehicles. At the same time, they're doing everything they can to shut down our remaining nuclear plants. At the same time, they're pushing, quote, alternative energy, which is terribly inefficient. And to me, there's sort of a big disconnect. If we wanted to embrace more electric-driven vehicles, we ought to, in parallel, be looking at how we're going to generate electricity. Now, I am aware of some really exciting technological changes to where we do use solar. So think about this concept for a minute. You take solar. Now remember, unfortunately, we don't generally have a good way to store electricity very well. So if you acquire from the sun interacts with the solar, produces electricity. At that moment, you can take it and feed your car battery, right? But what about like today when the sun goes down? Well, here is a technology cycle that I think has long-term merit. We take a high-energy storage battery system. So the solar
Can be stored,
charges the
yes.
battery. So when Happy Jack pulls his electric car next to it, he's taking the electricity from battery A to the battery B in your car.
All right.
Okay?
All right.
I think that there are a number of places where this solar to battery system
As a matter of
makes
fact,
sense.
as a matter of fact, it is in use already. Look at the NASA programs, all their orbiters or
course, of course.
observers or even Kepler or whatever, and they use the solar
Yes.
solar battery
That's right.
panels, right?
That's right.
The big wing. Right?
But the cost of those are enormously high. And remember, they don't have any clouds to interfere, so they get the sunlight
All right.
rather continuously.
And there's also, let me do a real quick check. There was one article I read about, I don't know if it's true or false, that the new car is being renovated that uses the ground magnetic field to drive. Have you heard anything about that?
I'm aware that a number of people are looking at that technologically.
Oh yeah?
But again, that's in the science thinking realm.
I see.
It's like centricity, which is the use of electricity without a wire. There's a lot of interesting
I see.
technologies
And
being
also
looked at.
there's another thing that I learned when I was doing my homework this morning. I saw a model bus, huge bus, tour bus, about a 56 passenger bus. It's driven by nothing but compressed air.
Okay, that's from India.
No, China.
In China,
Compressed air.
India's dealing
Air
with a lot of
compressed-
error.
You heard anything about that?
Yeah, India's been
That's a known
looking at
technology or what?
no, it's not magic. It's just it uses an air turbine. So you have a container of compressed air. There again, it's an efficiency question. How much air can you do? If we could plug into our politicians, you would have an unlimited supply of hot air. But plugging into our politicians is hard. So it's hard to have a container.
You scare me by saying to plug into politicians. I really I wonder which hand you want to go. Come on. Anyway, it's a good thought, good thinking to open up new fields, new possibilities, right? The compressed air vehicles is really a way to go. And it says, with the following numbers, that one charge of air, a compressed air, could make it go to 180 to 200 kilometers. That's about 140 something miles, something like that, one charge. Not bad.
I'm unaware of any vehicle that is currently being produced that has that sort of range. The Indian vehicles that I am familiar with have a range of like 50 because compressed air takes a lot of energy to pump up the container.
Yes.
Okay. And unless you have a very high pressure vessel that can tolerate thousands of pounds per square inch, it takes a lot of work to pump that up.
Better be strong though. You don't
And
want
it has to
go
be
like a bomb.
Yeah, and then the thicknesses of the chamber that holds the air make it very big and heavy, which is all the weight that you now have to carry. I just suggest to you limited applications maybe. I don't see that as a long-term good solution.
All right.
I like the idea of carrying your own energy.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. Well, we're over time already. With my good friend Drexel Smith, we're trying to look into the future. In addition to having defeated the bill sb350, we're looking into the future. Meantime, we're waiting for next year for it to come back anyway. And we reviewed about U.S.-China relationship in the first segment, and I've called this a very, very significant show. So to my audience, thank you very much, and to you, thank you very much, Drexel.
Good to see you, Jack.
You're wonderful.